Most of what we know about the ancient Greeks has come to us through their literature, poetry, and comedies, as well as the stunning artwork that captured moments from their daily lives. But what if some of those wild mythical tales weren't just creative fiction, but echoes of real places, real people, and real events? In this video, we're digging deep into 15 ancient Greek myths that turned out to be true, from the ruins of Troy to creatures once dismissed as pure legend. Let's start off with number 15, the city of Tenea. Tenea was the kind of city that whispered from the margins of myth. Said to be founded by Trojan prisoners spared by Agamemnon after the war, it lingered in Greek lore like an afterthought, important enough to be mentioned, too elusive to be proven. For centuries, its exact location stayed buried. But things changed in 1846 when the Kouros of Tenea, a stunning marble statue, was uncovered in the area. That alone raised eyebrows. Then, in 1984, a local villager found a sarcophagus. Then came famous archaeologist Eleni Korka, who led a series of excavations starting in 2013. What they found wasn't just a city, it was a living time capsule. Pottery, coins, baths, streets, all pointing to a thriving community that existed right where the myth said it would. Tenea wasn't just real, it was rich, organized, and eerily aligned with ancient accounts. What started as a footnote in a myth became a full-blown historical revelation. So, while some stories are made by good people, others are made by good lives. Number 14, golden apples. Golden apples weren't just fruit. They were the mythological chaos bombs of ancient Greece. Eris, the goddess of strife, wasn't invited to a divine wedding. So, like any petty immortal, she tossed a golden apple labeled "to the fairest" into the party. The result? Well, a beauty contest between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, with poor Paris of Troy roped in as judge. Aphrodite's bribe, Helen of Sparta, set off the Trojan War. For centuries, scholars wondered if this golden fruit was just a metaphor, but later it turns out not entirely. Some researchers argue the golden apple might have been quince, which glows a warm yellow and was prized in the ancient world. Others say oranges, though those arrived in Europe much later. There's even a case for argan fruit or heirloom tomatoes. In many languages, orange translates to golden apple, a linguistic breadcrumb that points to its mythic role. So while the apple itself didn't cause a war, it wasn't pulled from thin air. It had a peel, a purpose, and a price. So yeah, golden apple is real. Number 13, orichalcum. Plato hyped orichalcum like it was the mythical metal that could put gold to shame. In Critias, he describes Atlantis's walls gleaming with it, flashing red like the whole city was dipped in molten fire. Most scholars brushed it off as allegorical bling for a utopia that never existed. But then 2015 happened. Off the coast of Gela, Sicily, a 2600-year-old shipwreck surfaced, and inside, 39 solid ingots of something eerily similar to Plato's prized metal. No magic here, just chemistry. The ingots were a copper-zinc alloy with hints of iron, nickel, and lead, nothing otherworldly, but still rare enough to catch everyone off guard. The color? A deep, burnished red, just as described. While it's not proof Atlantis ever rose or sank, it is a smoking gun for the existence of orichalcum. It wasn't some fantasy metal. It was real, valuable, and worth shipping across dangerous seas. Sometimes, lost treasure doesn't sparkle like diamonds, it burns like a forgotten legend. If you ever come across a piece of orichalcum, you better hold on to it tight. Number 12, Plout Onion at Hierapolis. In ancient times, there were places you just didn't go. Well, let's say there are a lot of solid reasons. One of them was the Plout Onion at Hierapolis, Turkey, dubbed Pluto's Gate, a crack in the earth believed to lead straight to the underworld. Animals brought into the chamber would drop dead in minutes. Humans? Well, the priests walked out untouched, which only made the myth more potent. Pluto, or Hades, was watching, and his wrath was selective. In 2011, archaeologists reopened the site and finally figured out the trick. Seismic activity below the cave produces dense pockets of carbon dioxide. The gas clings low to the ground, choking anything short enough to breathe it. The priests, they knew how to work the scene, holding their breath, walking high, and staging the whole thing like divine theater. The underworld wasn't just a belief, it was a spectacle, engineered by people who understood just enough science to scare everyone else. Pluto didn't need to show up. His gate sold the story all on its own. Number 11. Mount Olympus. The ancient Greeks didn't just pull Mount Olympus out of thin air. It's a very real mountain, towering over the border between Thessaly and Macedonia, with its highest peak, Mytikas, scraping the sky at nearly 9,600 feet. To the Greeks, this was no ordinary hunk of rock. This was home turf for Zeus, Hera, and the whole divine crew. And it's not hard to see why. Clouds wrap around its peak like a curtain, hiding something sacred. In 1913, the first documented climb was made, but relics found scattered along the cliffs suggest ancient travelers were scaling Olympus centuries earlier, some as far back as 400 BCE. Modern scientists have even suggested that celestial events like meteor strikes or bizarre electrical storms around the mountain could have fed the mythos. To ancient eyes, that kind of natural chaos could only mean one thing: the gods were in session. Olympus wasn't just tall, it was terrifying, majestic, and weirdly alive. No wonder they believed the gods lived there. We mean, have you seen the view? It's awesome. Number 10. The Mycenaean civilization. Long before the Greek world strutted onto the stage, the Mycenaeans were running the show. They were the muscle behind many of the legends. Perseus founded the city of Mycenae, and Agamemnon supposedly ruled from there during the Trojan War. For years, people thought it was all poetic embellishment, until Heinrich Schliemann, the stubborn, self-financed German archaeologist, showed up in 1874. Digging into a hill in southern Greece, he unearthed Mycenae's ruins, a royal cemetery, and golden burial masks, including the now famous Mask of Agamemnon. While it turned out to predate Agamemnon's supposed era, it didn't matter. What Schliemann proved was that the world Homer described wasn't entirely fantasy. It had stone walls, grave circles, and a civilization powerful enough to launch fleets. The Mycenaean culture, once dismissed as a myth, had been very real. And thanks to Schliemann's obsession, the ghosts of that world were yanked out of legend and firmly planted back into history, one shovel at a time. Number 9. The Chimera. The Chimera was a nightmare fuel. It was the original monster mash. A lion's head, a goat sprouting from its back, and a snake for a tail, all fused into one fire-spewing abomination. It sounds like something made up during a fever dream, but the inspiration might have been more geologic than genetic. Enter Mount Chimera in modern-day Turkey. Nestled near the ruins of ancient Lycia, this rocky slope has flames leaking out of the ground, fueled by natural gas vents that have been burning for thousands of years. Imagine that an ancient traveler sees fire erupting from stone, wild goats grazing on the cliffs, and the occasional big cat slinking through the brush. The result? A beast made of all three, belching fire like it owned the land. Homer's Iliad didn't invent the Chimera, it just dramatized what was already terrifying. Nature gave them the ingredients, and mythmakers did the rest. It's not just symbolic, it's suspiciously specific. What do you think about it, guys? Let us know in the comments below. Now let's talk about number 8, the Palace of Nestor. Nestor wasn't just a wise old man in Homer's stories, he ruled over a real kingdom, and for centuries, scholars debated whether his lavish palace ever actually existed. That changed in 1939 when Carl Blegen uncovered the first hints of a sprawling Mycenaean complex near Pylos. Then, World War II rudely interrupted the dig. But Blegen returned in the 1950s, and what he unearthed matched Homer's epics almost too well. Storerooms lined with wine jars, intricate frescoes, and enough tablets to choke a Trojan horse. The final mic drop came in 2015, when archaeologists nearby discovered the Griffin warrior tomb, a burial packed with gold, armor, and artifacts that screamed elite status. While the tomb didn't belong to Nestor himself, it confirmed the area's wealth and power at the exact time Homer's tales were set. Turns out, the poetic old king wasn't completely a myth. His kingdom, its riches, and its influence were carved into the landscape, just waiting to be dug back up. Imagine if you dug up your backyard and discovered that you were living on top of a lost civilization. Well, you'll become famous and rich. Number 7. Cyclops. The Cyclops is one-eyed, massive, and disturbingly fond of eating humans raw without any seasoning. These towering nightmares have haunted Greek myth for ages, especially thanks to Odysseus's run-in with Polyphemus. But here's the twist. There might have been a prehistoric misunderstanding behind it all. On Mediterranean islands like Crete, ancient Greeks stumbled upon bizarre skulls. These belonged to dwarf elephants, now extinct, with a large central cavity where the trunk once attached. To someone without anatomical training, it looked suspiciously like a single, massive eye socket. Enter Othenio Abel, a paleontologist who, in 1914, suggested that these fossils may have inspired the Cyclops myth. It made too much sense. Elephant bones, without context, become monsters in the mind. Mix that with isolated island landscapes and the ever-human love for a good scary story, and suddenly you've got people whispering about giants. The Cyclops may not have walked the earth, but its face, thanks to fossilized trickery, sure did. So, not everything you see on the internet is fake. Some are real and disturbing. Number 6. The Oracle at Delphi. In ancient Greece, the most sought-after advice didn't come from generals or kings. It came from a woman in a trance, high off invisible vapors. The Oracle of Delphi, known as the Pythia, wasn't just a priestess, she was the hotline to Apollo. Rulers crossed continents to hear her cryptic visions, delivered while she sat above a chasm, breathing in something only the gods were supposed to understand. For a while, modern archaeologists dismissed it as symbolic drama. When the temple was excavated in the 1800s, there were no fumes, no vapors, no mystery. Case closed, or not. In 2001, geologists discovered intersecting fault lines beneath the site. And from the nearby spring, ethylene, a gas known to induce euphoria and hallucinations. Turns out, the ancient Greeks didn't need magic. They had geology, and their oracle. She wasn't faking visions, she was riding a chemical wave triggered by nature itself. The gods didn't whisper from the clouds. They rose from the earth, one trance at a time. Number 5. The Labyrinth of Knossos. The story of the labyrinth is the kind of tale that makes you question the sanity of ancient mythology. A queen seduced by a bull, a monstrous child locked in a maze, yet underneath that chaos lies a buried truth. On the island of Crete, British archaeologist Arthur Evans began excavating in 1900 and uncovered a palace so elaborate it redefined extra, winding corridors, staircases leading to nowhere, and frescoes bursting with bull imagery made it clear something very weird went on here. While no one found a literal half-man, half-beast in the basement, the site fits the myth's vibe almost too perfectly. The Minoans did worship bulls, and their rituals were no joke. Throw in the skulls of massive prehistoric elephants, and it's not hard to see how the idea of a monstrous bull-headed being stuck in a maze took hold. The Palace of Knossos didn't need fiction to be eerie. It was already a myth begging to be believed. Alright, now, let's move to number 4. Archimedes' heat ray. Archimedes wasn't just scribbling equations in the sand, he was cooking up ancient war tech that still freaks people out. During the Roman siege of Syracuse in 213 BCE, legend says the inventor turned sunlight into a weapon. By arranging polished bronze shields or mirrors, Archimedes supposedly redirected sunlight to set Roman ships ablaze. For centuries, it sounded more like myth than science. But in 1973, Greek engineer Ioannis Sakis ran the test in Athens. Using 70 mirrors, he lit a wooden boat on fire from 160 feet away. Not bad. Sure, the Mythbusters tried and flopped 3 times, but in 2023, a 13-year-old kid named Brendan Senner pulled it off on a smaller scale using basic materials. It wasn't about the tech, it was about how precise you had to be. While historians still argue about the logistics, the idea that a mind like Archimedes even conceived it proves one thing: the man wasn't just ahead of his time, he was playing a whole different game. If this death machine is real, just imagine the destruction it can cause. Number 3. Atlantis. Atlantis has been humanity's favorite lost city obsession for over 2,000 years. Plato's account describes a glittering island empire, rich, powerful, and so arrogant the gods wiped it out in one catastrophic night. For centuries, people hunted it like a prize. Most came up empty. But what if Atlantis wasn't a specific place, but a memory wrapped in metaphor? One theory points directly to Santorini, formerly Thera, a thriving volcanic island in the Aegean Sea. Around 1600 BCE, it exploded in one of the most violent eruptions in recorded history. The blast shattered the island, triggered monstrous tsunamis, and crippled the advanced Minoan civilization on nearby Crete. What followed wasn't just devastation, it was erasure. Cities disappeared, cultures collapsed, and survivors may have passed the story on, retelling it as a cautionary tale of hubris and divine punishment. Atlantis may not have been swallowed by the gods, but by ash and sea. And sometimes, myth is just history wearing a more dramatic outfit. Number 2. Hercules and the Nemean lion. Hercules had a reputation for punching problems in the face, and none was more iconic than his first labor slaying the Nemean lion. The beast had skin tougher than bronze and claws sharper than swords, terrorizing the hills of Nemea. Most warriors bounced off it like rubber balls. Hercules, however, just wrestled the thing to death and wore its hide like a trophy coat. Sounds dramatic, but maybe not entirely fictional. Ancient texts, fossil records, and even artwork suggest lions once roamed parts of Europe. The Eurasian cave lion and later the European lion may have stuck around longer than we thought. Some claims place them in Greece as late as the classical period. They were larger than modern lions and definitely scary enough to become legends. So, was there a literal invincible lion? Well, no. But a lion menacing villages? Absolutely plausible. The myth exaggerated the beast, but the fear, that was real, and Hercules just became the hero people needed to survive it. If he is real, then Kraken would be too. Number 1. Scylla and Charybdis. Sailors back in the day weren't just battling storms, they were navigating legends. Take the twin sea terrors Scylla and Charybdis, one a rock-dwelling beast that snatched men off ships, the other a whirlpool that swallowed boats whole. To cross between them was a no-win scenario. But long before GPS, that danger was very real. Just ask anyone who tried to pass through the Strait of Messina. This narrow channel between Sicily and mainland Italy is infamous for its treacherous currents, swirling eddies, and sudden whirlpools. Ancient mariners, facing an unpredictable nightmare of waves and rocks, had to make impossible choices. Lose a few men to jagged outcrops or risk the entire ship being sucked under. That's not a metaphor. It was a genuine gamble. Over time, nature's fury grew fangs and a name, then two. The myth was never about literal monsters. It was about survival, decisions, and the sea's cruel way of testing both. What do you think about it? Well, let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. We just love to hear them. And as we always say, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon in the next one.